So I was looking at my bookshelf this morning while I was drinking my coffee, and I realized something slightly depressing.
Oh, no.
Actually, more than slightly. It was genuinely embarrassing. I have 3 different books on how to learn French.
Okay.
I have a stack of flashcards that are still in the shrink wrap. I even have a subscription to one of those expensive language apps. I'm
Mhm.
paying for it every single month, and I haven't opened it in like 4 months.
Right.
And it just hit me. If you drop me in the middle of Paris right now and ask me to order a croissant, I would probably starve to death.
You are the best prepared person in the world who can't speak a single word of French.
That is exactly it. I am professionally prepared. And it's not just language. I think
Yeah.
everyone listening right now has that one area of their life.
Mm.
Maybe it's the garage gym you spent $2,000 on, but this just acts as a really expensive coat rack now.
Yeah, or the business plan.
Oh, the business plan. You know the one, it's color-coded in a spreadsheet. It's sitting in a folder on your desktop titled Future Empire. You've even bought the domain name,
Of course you bought the domain name.
but you haven't sold a single thing. We feel so busy. We feel exhausted by the sheer weight of our own planning. But if we're honest and we look at the scoreboard, it's 0-0.
And that is the paradox we are going to take apart today.
Yeah.
It is one of the most frustrating feelings in the human experience, that feeling of running as hard as you can, you're sweating, you're tiring yourself out, and then you look down and realize you're on a treadmill.
You haven't gone anywhere.
You haven't moved an inch.
So today we are diving into a set of source materials that revolve around what's called the third law of behavior change. But specifically, we're going to attack a concept that I think is the single biggest lie we tell ourselves when it comes to productivity.
Mm-hmm.
It's the difference between being in what the text calls motion and taking action.
And before anyone, tunes out thinking this is just some semantic debate like, oh, motion, action, those are basically synonyms. We need to be really clear. This isn't a grammar lesson.
No.
This is a biology lesson.
Right. We aren't just talking about willpower or, getting your act together. We are going to be looking at studies on something called neuroplasticity. We're going to talk about London taxi drivers and the literal physical shape of their brains.
It's fascinating stuff.
We're going to look at musicians, at mathematicians.
Yeah.
Because when you understand why you plan instead of do, you realize it's not just because you're lazy, it's because your brain is actually trying to protect you.
Exactly. It's a safety mechanism.
Yeah.
But it's a safety mechanism that is ultimately keeping you stuck. So the mission for this deep dive is to get you out of that motion trap, that safe, warm, fuzzy place where you feel productive.
It feels so good there.
It does. And push you into the cold, hard reality of action. Because that is the only place where the results actually live.
So let's just jump right in. The source material opens with this fantastic story. It's almost like a parable, but it comes from a real context. It's about a photography class at the University of Florida.
Right.
And I love this story because it sounds so counterintuitive to everything we've ever been taught in the education system.
It really does. It completely flips the standard grading model on its head. So you have to imagine the scene, right? You have a professor named Jerry Uelsmann. It's the first day of class. Introduction to film photography.
Okay.
The room probably smells like developer fluid and, excitement. He looks at this room full of eager students. They're all holding their cameras, ready to be the next Ansel Adams. And he literally splits the room right down the middle.
Just an arbitrary line, like you guys on the left, you guys on the right.
Right down the center.
Okay.
He points to the left side of the room and says, you are the quantity group. And he gives them their syllabus. The rules for this group were incredibly simple. He told them, you will be graded solely on the volume of work you produce.
Okay, so just pure numbers, no subjectivity.
Pure raw numbers. He said, on the final day of class, I'm going to tally the number of photos you have submitted. If you have 100 photos, you get an A. If you have 90 photos, you get a B. 80 gets you a C. And so on.
So it's just industrial. It's a factory model. Just click the shutter. He didn't care if the photos were blurry. He didn't care if the lighting was terrible or if your thumb was in the shot.
No judging on the quality whatsoever.
No.
It was all about volume. Just turn the crank. Now he turns to the other side of the room, the right side, the quality group.
Okay.
Their assignment was the complete opposite. He told them, you only have to produce one single photo for the entire semester.
Which, I have to be honest, that sounds like the dream assignment. I would have fought to be in that group. It sounds like a vacation.
It sounds great on paper, doesn't it? But of course there was a catch. To get an A, that one photo had to be, in his words, nearly perfect.
Ah.
Excellence was the only metric that mattered. He wanted a masterpiece.
So you've got one group just running around, shooting everything in sight, fire hydrants, stray cats, their own feet, just to hit their quota.
Yeah.
And the other group is sitting there, probably rubbing their chins, thinking these deep, profound thoughts about lighting and composition and the human condition.
Precisely. You have the doers versus the thinkers. Now, let's fast forward to the end of the term. If you were a betting person, who would you put your money on to produce the best work?
Well, logic would tell you it's the quality group, right? They spent months, an entire semester, agonizing over the perfect shot. They could refine their theory, set up the perfect scene. They had the luxury of time and intense focus.
It seems obvious.
Absolutely. I mean, if I have 4 months to take one picture, I'm going to make sure the lighting is impeccable. I'm going to wait for that perfect sunset. I'm going to study the masters. The other guys are just, spraying and praying with their cameras.
That is the logical assumption. That is what we are all trained to believe. But when Professor Uelsmann graded all the work at the end of the semester, he found something that absolutely shocked him.
What was it?
Every single one of the best photos, the ones with the best composition, the most emotional depth, the sharpest clarity, the most interesting subjects, every single one came from the quantity group.
No way. The factory workers beat the artists?
They crushed them. It wasn't even close.
Okay, we need to unpack that. We have to figure out why. Because this breaks the rule of quality over quantity that we hear all the time. Why did the group that was just trying to hit a quota end up producing better art?
Because while the quality group was sitting around thinking about perfection, the quantity group was out in the world actively failing.
Failing.
And that is the key word here. They were taking bad photos. Lots and lots of them. They were underexposing shots. They were overexposing them. They were messing up the focus, trying different compositions that didn't work.
They were getting real-world feedback.
Immediate feedback. For every bad photo, they were learning something tangible. Oh, that didn't work. Let me try this angle. Oh, that lighting made the subject look totally washed out. Let me try a filter next time.
Yeah.
They were honing their skills through the physical act of doing.
So they were basically running hundreds of tiny experiments.
Hundreds of them. They were in the darkroom, seeing what worked and what didn't. They were learning the physics of the camera, the chemistry of the film. They were getting their hands dirty.
Whereas the quality group was, what? Just paralyzed by the idea of perfection?
They were paralyzed by theory. The source text says they spent this semester speculating about perfection. They probably had debates. They might have written papers. They argued about what makes a photo truly good. They read books about photography.
They were in their heads.
Completely.
Yeah.
They never engaged with the physical reality of the craft. So in the end, they had a lot of really interesting, unverified theories and one mediocre photograph to show for it.
That is brutal, but it resonates so much. It reminds me of that Voltaire quote that's mentioned in the text. The best is the enemy of the good.
It's a perfect real-world application of that quote, isn't it? The quality group got so bogged down looking for the optimal plan, the perfect photo,
that they never got around to just taking a good one.
Exactly. And we see this everywhere, not just in photography classes. We see people looking for the absolute fastest way to lose weight, or the scientifically perfect muscle building program, or the flawless business idea.
We spend more time researching the workout than actually working out.
We become so focused on figuring out the best approach that we never get around to taking any action.
I think this is where we need to introduce the definitions that really frame this whole discussion. The text calls it the difference between being in motion and taking action.
Right.
Now, I have to be the skeptic here for a second, because to me, motion sounds active. If I'm in motion, I'm moving, I'm doing stuff. Why does the author draw such a hard line between these two? They sound similar.
It is a really tricky distinction, but understanding it is the key to unlocking why you might feel so busy but aren't actually improving. So let's define them clearly.
Okay.
Motion is defined in the text as planning, strategizing, and learning. It's all the prep work.
Yeah.
Action, on the other hand, is behavior that actually delivers an outcome.
Okay, let's pressure test that, because I feel like I do a lot of motion, and I definitely call it work. If I go to the gym and I spend 20 minutes talking to the personal trainer about the absolute best way to do a deadlift, am I not working out?
Right. No.
Yeah.
That is motion.
But I'm at the gym, I'm in my workout clothes, I'm probably sweating a little bit just from the humidity in there.
You are in the building, yes.
Yeah.
But have you lifted a single weight? Have you torn a muscle fiber? which is what causes growth. No.
Mm.
Muscle growth cannot happen from the conversation. The conversation is preparation for the result. That is motion.
Okay. So action is grabbing the bar and pulling until my face turns red.
Precisely. Let's use another example. Writing. This is a common one for our listeners. If you outline a book chapter, if you color code all your research, you set up your writing desk just so. You make the perfect cup of coffee.
Yeah.
That is all motion.
I feel personally attacked right now. That is my entire morning routine.
It feels like work. It's seductive. That's the trap. But if you type one sentence that could actually be published, that is action.
So searching for a better diet plan and reading 3 books on nutrition.
That's motion.
And eating 1 piece of broccoli.
That's action. It delivers the nutritional outcome. The books don't.
So is the argument here that motion is bad? I mean, should we just get rid of it? Because you can't just walk into a gym for the first time and start throwing heavy weights around without knowing what you're doing. They'll slip a disc.
No, absolutely not.
You can't just start a business without any plan at all. Don't we need motion?
We do. And the source material is very careful here. Motion is useful. It can even be necessary initially.
Yeah.
You need a plan. You need to map out the route before you start driving across the country. Okay, the problem arises, and this is the aha moment for so many people, when motion becomes a form of procrastination.
When preparation becomes procrastination. Say that again.
When your preparation is actually just a way to avoid doing the thing you're preparing for, that's when you're in the trap.
And why do we do that? Why do we switch into that mode?
Because action carries the risk of failure. This is the psychological root of the entire problem.
Ah, there it is. The fear factor.
Think about it. If you are just planning your novel, you can't possibly write a bad chapter.
Right. It's still perfect in your head.
Exactly. No one can critique your outline if it stays in your private notebook. If you are just researching a new business idea, you can't go bankrupt. You can't lose money. If you are just looking for the best gym, you don't have to feel out of breath and weak under a barbell.
So motion is a shield. It's a way to protect our ego.
It's a safe harbor. Most of us are experts at avoiding criticism. We don't want to be judged. We don't want to fail publicly or even privately. So we slip into motion because it validates our identity as someone who is working on it, but it protects us from the harsh reality of the work itself.
It's a form of deception, really. It's productive procrastination. It feels like you're working, it looks like you're working, but it's actually a defense mechanism against judgment.
That's it, perfectly put. You can tell yourself, I've got conversations going with 4 potential clients right now. This is good. We're moving in the right direction. Or I brainstormed some really good ideas for that book today. It feels like progress.
But you haven't made a sale. You haven't written a page.
Exactly. Unless you ask for the sale or write the page, you are standing completely still.
So the litmus test for the listener then is to ask yourself, are you planning because you genuinely need more information to start, or are you planning because you are afraid to start?
That is the question. And you have to be brutally honest with yourself. If you have enough information to take the first small step, but you're still researching, you are hiding in motion.
Then what's the way out?
The way out is to understand that mastering a habit or any skill is about shifting from perfect planning to repetition. You don't need to map out every single feature of a new habit. You just need to practice it. You just need to get your reps in.
And when you say reps, we're not just using a gym metaphor here. We are actually talking about what happens physically inside the brain.
Yes.
This is where the source material shifts from sort of psychology to hard biology. And I want to get into the weeds here because this stuff is fascinating.
It is deeply biological. To understand this, we have to define habit formation properly. The text defines it as the process by which a behavior becomes progressively more automatic through repetition.
More automatic through repetition.
And this happens because of a process in the brain called long-term potentiation.
Long-term potentiation. Okay, that sounds like something I'd need a PhD to understand. Break that down for us in plain English.
It sounds complex, but the concept is actually pretty intuitive. It just refers to the strengthening of the connections between neurons in your brain based on recent patterns of activity.
Right.
Basically, every single time you repeat an action, the cell-to-cell signaling for that action improves. It gets faster and stronger.
So the brain is literally rewiring itself in response to what you do.
Literally.
Yeah.
There is a physical change happening in the structure of your brain. And to talk about this, we have to talk about a man named Donald Hebb. Back in 1949, he was a neuropsychologist who gave us what is probably the most famous, catchy rhyme in all of neuroscience.
Okay.
He coined the concept that is now known as Hebb's Law, which is, Neurons that fire together wire together.
Neurons that fire together, wire together. I love that. It's so simple. But what does wiring together actually look like in the gray matter? Is it like soldering a circuit board inside your skull?
That's a really good image, actually.
Mhm.
But let's use an analogy that the source material touches on. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a dense forest, just a wall of trees and thick bushes.
Okay.
If you walk through it one time, you barely leave a trail. You might bend a few blades of grass, maybe snap a twig, but if you look back, you can barely see where you walked. The forest just closes in behind you.
That's doing an action one time, like taking one photo.
Exactly. But what if you walk that same exact path 100 times?
Well, then you trample the grass, you push back the bushes, you start to wear a little dirt path into the ground.
Right. And what if you walk it 1,000 times?
Then you erode the earth, you create a trench. Eventually, that path is so clear, so defined, that you could walk it with your eyes closed. You don't have to think about where to put your feet.
The path becomes the path of least resistance.
Right.
That is precisely what happens in the brain. This is long-term potentiation. The physical gap between the neurons, it's called the synapse, it becomes more efficient at transmitting the signal. You are paving a neurological highway.
So we're not just talking about getting used to it in some vague mental sense. We're talking about physical architecture changes. You are building roads in your brain.
Absolutely. And the source material gives us some incredible, concrete examples of this physical change to prove it's not just a metaphor. Let's look at the London taxi drivers.
Oh, right, the knowledge. I've heard about this. For our listeners who might not know, being a London cabbie isn't like being an Uber driver. You don't just stare at Waze or Google Maps.
No, not at all. It is arguably the hardest memory test in the entire world. It's called the knowledge. To get a license to drive one of those iconic black cabs in London, you have to memorize something like 25,000 streets.
25,000?
And every landmark, every hotel, every museum, every one-way street within a 6-mile radius of Charing Cross.
I can't even remember my own zip code half the time. That's insane.
It takes years of study. These men and women spend 3, 4, sometimes 5 years on mopeds, just driving around London day in and day out, memorizing the map. It's grueling.
So scientists decided to look at the brains of these drivers to see what all that work was doing. What did they find?
They analyzed their brains using MRI scans, and they focused on a specific region called the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the part of the brain that's deeply involved in spatial memory. It's your internal GPS system.
Okay.
And they found that the hippocampus was significantly physically larger in the taxi drivers than in a control group of non-drivers.
So the act of memorizing the map literally made the map reading part of their brain bigger?
Yes. They had physically bulked up that part of their brain. It's exactly like doing bicep curls, but for spatial memory. The brain responded to the intense demand by adding more gray matter to that region.
That is incredible. But wait, here's the part of the study that really proves the action thesis for me. What happened when the cabbies retired?
This is the twist. This is the crucial part. The scientists then looked at retired driver's men who had stopped doing the job, stopped navigating those streets every day, and they found that the hippocampus had decreased in size.
It shrank back down.
It atrophied. Just like a muscle does when you stop working out. If you stop lifting weights, your muscles shrink. If you stop actively using that neural pathway, the brain reallocates those resources elsewhere.
Wow.
It proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the brain adapts to exactly what you do, not what you think about doing or what you used to do.
Use it or lose it,
Yeah.
in the most literal sense possible.
Use it or lose it. The brain is an incredibly efficient organ. It's not going to maintain a 6-lane highway that nobody drives on anymore. It'll let it get overgrown.
And that really reinforces why that motion phase is so dangerous if you stay in it too long. You aren't firing the neurons. You aren't driving on the road. You aren't building the gray matter. You are just standing at the edge of the forest looking at a map of it.
Exactly. You can't build a bicep by reading a book about weightlifting.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't build a new habit by reading a book about the habit. You have to fire the neurons. You have to take the action.
So we've established that repetition physically changes the brain. Now, I want to talk about what that process actually looks like over time, because the source material has this graph, I think it's figure 11, that shows something called the habit line. Can you visualize that for us?
Sure. Picture a simple graph. On the vertical y-axis, you have automaticity, which is just a fancy word for how easy and automatic the thing is to do.
Okay.
On the horizontal x-axis, you have repetitions, the number of times you've done the thing.
Okay, so reps versus ease. Got it.
Right. You start at what the graph calls point A. It's the very beginning. The curve is low and it's flat. The habit requires a massive amount of effort and concentration. It's hard. You have to consciously force yourself to do it.
This is the sucking
Yeah.
phase. This is the part where everyone quits.
Yes, this is the valley of despair. It feels awful. But then, if you stick with it, you get to point B.
Mm-hmm.
You've done a few reps now. The curve starts to slope upward. It's getting a little easier. It still requires conscious attention. You still have to try, but you aren't fighting yourself quite as much. The resistance is lower.
You're gaining a little bit of momentum.
And then, if you keep going, if you keep accumulating those reps, you eventually hit point C. And this is what the author calls the habit line. This is the critical threshold where the habit becomes more automatic than it is conscious. The behavior can be done more or less without thinking about it.
The non-conscious mind takes over.
It takes over completely. This is the holy grail. This is where we all want to be. Automaticity.
The source defines that as the ability to perform a behavior without thinking about each individual step.
Right. It's like when you drive home from work and you pull into your driveway and you have this sudden scary realization, I don't remember driving the last 5 miles.
That's terrifying, but I know exactly what you mean. Your brain was just on autopilot.
That's automaticity. Your conscious brain offloaded the familiar task of driving to the non-conscious mind so it could focus on other things, like what you're having for dinner, or that weird email from your boss. And that only happens after enough repetitions to cross that habit line.
The source also shows a second graph, a more practical one, specifically about walking. It's titled Walking 10 Minutes Per Day.
Yes, figure 12. It's a real learning curve from a specific study. It shows the data points of someone trying to build this really simple walking habit. And what you see is a classic curve rising over time.
Up and to the right?
Up and to the right. As the repetitions, the number of walks increase on the x-axis, the automaticity, how easy it feels, increases on the y-axis. It becomes less of a chore and more of the thing you just do.
And this brings us right back to our photography students from the beginning of our conversation.
It does.
The quantity group, the ones taking hundreds and hundreds of photos. They were marching right up that curve. They were activating the neural circuits for composition, for lighting, for developing film. They were crossing the habit line through active practice.
And the quality group.
They never even got on the graph. They were stuck at the starting line in passive learning. They never fired the neurons, so they never wired the skill. They were trying to find a shortcut to point C without ever going through the struggle of point A and point B.
And that shortcut just doesn't exist in biology.
Which leads us to the question that I think every single person listening has asked themselves at some point. I know for a fact I've Googled this at 2 a.m. How long does it take to build a new habit?
Yes. The magic number question.
We've all heard the myths. Is it 21 days? I think that was the original one. Then it was 30 days. Now I hear it's 66 days. I feel like I hear a different number every time I look it up.
The calendar obsession, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And the source material is very, very clear on this. That is a wrong question to be asking.
Why is it the wrong question? It seems like a perfectly logical thing to want to know.
Because there is nothing magical about time passing. Time is not the active ingredient. Repetition is. The question shouldn't be, how long does it take? The question should be, how many does it take?
How many does it take?
Exactly. How many repetitions are required to make this specific habit automatic for you? Think about it this way. You could try to do something twice in 30 days. Or you could do it 200 times in 30 days.
The timeline is exactly the same. 30 days have passed in both scenarios.
But the outcome on your brain is radically different. If you do it twice, you haven't wired anything. Your brain barely even noticed it happened. If you do it 200 times, you have literally re-sculpted your brain. You've dug that trench in the forest. It is the frequency of the action that makes the difference, not the duration of the calendar.
This is such a huge mindset shift for me. We are so obsessed with calendars. I'm doing a 30-day challenge. I'm doing dry January. But the calendar itself doesn't matter.
It really doesn't. Your current automatic habits, like brushing your teeth or tying your shoes, they're internalized over the course of thousands upon thousands of repetitions. Not years of time, but instances of doing. New habits require that same volume of frequency to cross the habit line and become second nature.
So we need to stop looking at the clock and start looking at the rep counter.
Ideally, yes. The expert advice here is to stop worrying about the timeline entirely. Just forget about it. It doesn't matter if it takes you 21 days or 300 days. That number is irrelevant. What matters is that you just focus on stringing together enough successful attempts until the behavior is firmly embedded in your mind and body.
Stringing together successful attempts? That sounds doable. But it also sounds like a lot of work.
It is work, of course it is. But this is why the third law of behavior changes make it easy. The whole point is that you have to make the reps easy enough to do so that you can accumulate enough of them to change your brain.
Ah, okay, so it's all connected.
It's all connected. If the rep is too hard, if the action is too daunting, you will naturally retreat back into motion because it's safer and it feels like you're still making progress.
Right. If I decide my daily action is to run a marathon, I'm never going to do it. I'll just plan my marathon training schedule forever and ever.
You have the best spreadsheets.
But if my action is just putting on my running shoes and walking out the front door.
Then you can get the reps in. You can increase the frequency. You can start moving up that curve towards automaticity.
Okay, so to recap what we've covered so far, because this feels really crucial, we start with the parable of the pots, or the photography class. Quantity beats quality because quantity forces you to do the work and learn from your inevitable mistakes.
Correct. And that work, the action, is biologically distinct from motion, which is just planning and learning.
And we get stuck in motion. We avoid action because deep down we want to delay or avoid failure. We prefer the safety of theory over the messy reality of practice.
Exactly. We're protecting our ego.
Right. But we have to push through that because we need action to trigger Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together, wire together. We need to physically change our brains just like the London taxi drivers did.
And we do that by focusing on frequency, not time. It's not about how many days have passed. It's about how many reps you've actually completed.
Yeah.
You are the architect of your own brain, but you have to pick up the hammer and actually build. You can't just stare at the blueprints all day.
It's a powerful framework. It really strips away all the excuses. I'm still researching.
Yeah.
Is no longer a valid excuse to not get started.
It's procrastination in a tuxedo. It looks classy and sophisticated, but underneath it's still just procrastination.
Procrastination in a tuxedo. I am absolutely stealing that.
Please do. It's all yours.
Now, before we sign off, there's one last little nugget in the source material that I really want to touch on. It's a bit of a teaser for the next concept, which is the law of least effort. But it connects so perfectly to what we've been discussing. It references Jared Diamond's book, Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Oh, this is a fascinating pivot. Yes, Diamond points out this one simple geographic fact that had a massive impact on the shape of human history.
And it's literally about shapes.
Yes, the shapes of the continents.
Yes.
So you look at a world map. The Americas and Africa, they lie on a north-south axis. They are tall and thin.
Okay. Like a vertical orientation?
Exactly. But Europe and Asia, that whole landmass lies on an east-west axis. It's wide and fat.
Okay, basic geography lesson. But what on earth does that have to do with my habits?
Well, Diamond argues that this simple shape dictated the speed at which agriculture could spread.
How so?
Crops spread much, much easier east to west because the climate, the length of the day, the seasons, they all remain relatively similar along the same latitude.
Yeah.
So if you can grow wheat in France, you can probably grow the same wheat in China.
Right, makes sense.
But it's incredibly difficult to spread crops north to south, say, from Canada down to Argentina.
Yeah.
Because you cross all these radically different climate zones. You hit deserts, then jungles, then mountains, then frozen tundras. The crops just can't adapt.
So the shape of the land itself made it easier or harder for agriculture and therefore or for complex civilizations to develop and spread.
Exactly. The environment constrained the behavior. The path of least resistance for farming was east-west, not north-south. And that had enormous consequences for history. And this leads to a really provocative thought for you, the listener, to take away today.
Lay it on us.
If the literal shape of a continent can dictate the history of human civilization, how much is the shape of your living room or your office dictating your personal habits right now?
Whoa. Okay.
We talk about willpower and planning and motion versus action. But the next step in this journey, what the text calls the law of least effort, is about understanding that your environment often shapes your behavior far more than your internal desire does. If you want to increase your frequency, if you want to get those all-important reps in, you might need to reshape your continent. You might need to change your environment first.
That is something to chew on. Is your living room designed for the habit you want or for the habit you currently have? Is your environment pushing you toward action, or is it keeping you stuck in motion?
Precisely.
Yeah.
If your guitar is packed away in its case in the back of the closet, you will not practice.
You'll never play it.
But if it's on a stand in the middle of your living room, you'll pick it up. If your running shoes are buried in the basement, you won't run. You have to design your environment to make the action, the first rep, as easy and obvious as possible.
Well, we are definitely going to have to save that deep dive for next time. That deserves its own full hour. For now, I think the message is crystal clear. Stop planning. Start researching. Stop waiting for the perfect moment or the optimal plan.
Hmm.
Be the quantity group. Go take a messy photo. Go write a bad sentence. Go do a mediocre workout. Just get the rep in.
Walk slowly, but never backward. Keep taking action.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll see you in the next one.